DA National Spokesperson, Willem Aucamp. Willem, good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us. At first sight of that statement, what is the reaction from within the Democratic Alliance? And perhaps you can talk to us about how that information was shared as to the decision of the president as it was announced today by the presidency.
Good evening, lady. Thank you for having me. The outcome of the negotiations in the clearinghouse mechanisms task team is definitely a win-win compromise that will enable the BELA Bill to be implemented without it undermining existing constitutional rights to mother tongue education. So one of the crucial things in this is that the president announced that the bill or the act will be implemented, but he made it clear that the Minister of Basic Education, the DA's Siviwe Gwagube, will have the task to develop norms, standards and regulations to govern this act.
Okay, and talk to me about, so you talk about it being a win-win. Explain how that is a win-win. Is the win in the norms and standards developed by the minister, and where then do you see those gaps for it to be a win for the Democratic Alliance as well?
Well, firstly, I think let's talk about the win for the people that wanted the BELA Act to be implemented.
Okay.
They've got a win because the whole of the BELA Act will be implemented. But on the other hand, there is also people that were opposed and that had a lot of reservations about it. And that will now be addressed by the norms and regulations that the minister will be tasked to implement. So the implementation of many acts, as well as this one, is determined on norms and regulations that will be set out by the minister. So I think that this is a win-win for everybody. Where constitutional rights as well as the right of mother tongue education will be implemented under this current law as it is.
Yeah, but I'm looking for the norms and standards, Mr. Aucamp, and this is what I'm looking for. The assistance for me is, you know, the norms and standards that you say will be developed by the Minister of Education. Where do you see a gap for that to be a win? So is that to say that as SGBs then consult with the education MECs in a province around their language policy, that there's opportunity there for some wiggle room, as you say, to protect some of the cultural groupings that the Democratic Alliance has been arguing for months are perhaps left vulnerable by the BELA Act?
Well, let me give you a practical example.
Sure.
If we take the implementation of the regulations with regards to grade R. Grade R is, in terms of this law, mandatory from the moment that it's been signed. But we all know that there is absolutely no practical way that it can be implemented on the 1st of January 2025, which is less than 2 weeks away from now. So it is now up to the minister to set the norms, standards and regulations to, in time, enable that part of the act to be implemented in full. In other words, she will now form norms and regulations that will guide schools of what they've got to do and when they've got to do it in order to be able to accommodate grade R's all across the board. So it is the same with the admissions as well as language policy. The minister will now write the regulations and norms and standards that SGB's got to adhere to, but as well that the education departments provincially must adhere to before they can interfere in the decisions made by an SGB. So we, at this stage, do not know what those rules and standards at the end of the day will look like. That process is now open for the minister to write those guidelines and to get that sorted out so that when this act then gets implemented in practice, that it is practically possible to do that.
Okay, so two things before I let you go, and I want to go with the second last one, and that being the statement saying that the GNU clearinghouse participants agreed that the act be fully implemented. This view was endorsed by leaders of the parties to the GNU in a meeting held with them today. So can we now just establish from the Democratic Alliance that in that meeting held today, did the DA put forward the idea that you also are in agreement with the implementation of the BELA Act in full as it is today?
The very important thing to realize here is that the DA and the other parties agreed to the full implementation, but it was done on the condition that the Minister of Basic Education, the DA, Siviwe Gwagube, has got the right to write and implement the norms, regulations and standards for this. So there is a caveat to us agreeing to the implementation of the whole of the Act, and that is the right of the minister to now do this. So at the end of the day, the Act will be implemented. But from the Democratic Alliance side, we've got a minister there that is from the DA that will now be in a position to write those regulations. And we've got the fullest confidence in Siviwe Gogube as the Minister of Basic Education to be able to do that in order to not only protect, but also to promote mother tongue education.
Okay, we appreciate that clarity. And one more, I think an important one, certainly in September this year, a big discussion around whether or not this, I suppose this ultimatum or this impasse over the BELA Act between the Democratic Alliance as well as the President was going to be something that put at jeopardy the stability of the government of national unity. Now that we've seen the authorization of the Act in full, clarify for us, does GNU still stand tall and strong?
I think that what we saw playing out here today is confirmation of the GNU not only standing strong, but growing in stature and in confidence within the members of the GNU. This BELA Act was extremely contentious. We all know that. And if we could, within the GNU, get to a compromise that worked for everybody, it is a feather in the cap of the GNU, and the willingness of all the parties within this GNU to objectively and open-mindedly go into negotiations with each other. We said on the 13th of September that if this was now a play for time thing and that other parties within the GNU will not come to the table with a clear intention of looking for a resolution and a solution to this problem, then it will help nothing. But 3 months has gone, and we have worked extremely hard within this GNU. And from the Democratic Alliance side, we've made it clear that we will not compromise our constitutional values, but that we will promote mother tongue education. And again, and it's very important, not only protect it, but it must be promoted. We must now change this education system so that it's to the benefit of every single different mother tongue speaker in South Africa.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for speaking to us, Willie. We really do appreciate it. And of course, I did say to our viewers at the top of this hour that we'd be speaking to Willem Zille, but Willem Aucamp there stepping in for that discussion. You're still watching News at Prime here.